I saw this one and I had to do a double take. And promise you, everything I'm telling you is straight without any political coloring here. Iowa is issuing gun permits to blind people. Banning them from getting those permits would apparently violate the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay, listen, I'm all for, and it's overdue, doing whatever we can to let the disabled population in this country have an equal shot at everything. But an equal shot, with a handgun or whatever else.
An equal shot.
I started off and then I figured I stepped on it. But Dougie, I'm going to give a practical example. So we've had cases, we've talked about these cases where the guy shot the person who was at his front door, okay? If somebody says something to somebody at the front door, they got headphones on or whatever, they can't hear him, and he pulls the trigger. If he can't see who's there, this is insane.
Could he be a worse shot than Plaxico Burress? Blind, not blind? Yeah,
but
he could be a good
bad
shot
facts make bad law. That's what we always see in these things. Listen, people say
they're blind.
People shouldn't blind. But there's many different types of blind.
That's
correct.
my God, that's true. They just have to be legally blind.
You could still see. Listen, they're talking about. Yeah, there has to be more facts in a case like this. If you take this and it's a blind person guns, it sounds a little.
No. Here's the thing.
Don't want to let them drive cars, Mark.
Well, I agree with you. This argument about it violating the ADA is nonsense because you have a First Amendment right to freely associate with people, and if you take away the car, it infringes the First Amendment right, which is at least as broad as the Second Amendment right. So put that aside for one moment. That's a nonsense argument. But here's what's advanced in support of this. Blind people are more vulnerable to attack, to abuse, to home invasions, to mugging on the street, and they need to be able to defend themselves. The people in Iowa say that you can train blind people, and again, Doug's right. There's a continuum. I'm legally blind. I'm 2,800. Now, giving me a gun would be a very, very bad idea. Having nothing to do with my vision. But the sheriff at least one Iowa county says I can train these people, and I will have a special course for teaching visually.
Mayo, hold on. I'm shoving in here because
people
we both know there's about 3 letters. NRA. Okay, take that aside though. I could defend this guy and get him off. Okay, forget about you 3 guys. How can you prove that he had malice of intent? How could you prove that, he was able to decipher whether or not it was, a legitimate threat or not? He's blind.
The bigger fear is that today you get off by claiming you're afraid. So if you say you're scared and you shot someone, it's a lot easier to say that you're blind and you say, well, I wasn't really sure. But at the same time, you now put yourself in the realm of being reckless because you should have known that you were at risk of harming somebody.
Who? The person who provides the gun?
Well, both the person who provides the gun, but certainly the person who has the gun, because how do you know who you're even shooting? And again, there are different levels of people, but they're not making any distinctions here.
No, they are. Look, here's the thing. I think that if you had a blanket proscription against a visually impaired person applying for the gun, you might have a cognizable claim under the ADA. You have to do this on an individualized basis. You administer tests. There's nothing unconstitutional about giving you a vision test to get a license. Nobody says that harms my First Amendment right to freely associate.
This is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Okay.
I thought the argument about them being especially vulnerable had some resonance. Who's an easier mark than a blind person, and how are they going to defend themselves?
Okay, but if you got a gun, you can't see where you're shooting.
How are you going to
help?
Spray the bullets. Somebody comes in the house.
Thank you.
Spray the bullets.
You just shoot all over the place.
If they break into the house,
again,
maybe you'll hit somebody. Maybe you'll hit a boss.
Gone out of his hand. All right. Now we get to New Jersey.
Get a
now,
dog. Right?
This one I thought again was again a crazy story. But the more you read, the more disturbing you see this. A couple suing the person who sold them $1 million home in Westfield, and if you know it, nice neighborhood there in New Jersey. They say the home came with a stalker who writes threatening letters. He calls himself the Watcher because he says his family has been watching that home for decades, and the letters are downright creepy. One says, "Do you need to fill the house with young blood that I requested? I asked the previous owners to bring me young blood." The couple now selling the house because they fear for their safety. Is it buyer beware because the prior owner obviously knew about this? Or do these folks have a case? Where does the line start and stop before what you have to notify a potential buyer when they're looking to purchase a house?
It goes by state to state. There's disclosure laws. Sometimes you have to disclose whether there's mold in the house, whether there's dangerous conditions.
Oh, there's mold in that
Well,
house.
right. So I think that any
No, but
disclosure.
how much is it incumbent on the buyer? Let's say I'm the buyer, that I hire an inspector, right? You hire an inspector before you do it. If I don't catch that there's mold in the house, my inspector screws up. Isn't my complaint with him, not so much the seller?
But there's certain disclosure rules that are on the seller, that if the seller knows there's certain things that are wrong, and especially things that you can't find out by
Yeah, but they're
reasonable
being
search.
sued for breach of contract and fraud. So in a fraud claim, is there a common law duty to disclose that one creepy letter came a week before the closing? Does that affect the habitability of the premises of the house?
When I thought about it,
Yeah.
I thought that as far as real estate transaction goes,
Right.
probably not. But maybe a general fraud claim, maybe
That's what it is.
something.
It's a fraud
Yeah,
claim.
I mean-
Yeah,
Is
but
that a
in order
material?
for
Is that even material that some nutbag is writing letters? It doesn't affect the fitness of the house
In order for it to be fraud, you have to have made a misrepresentation.
or an omission.
And, well, I don't know. I don't know that the omission would get you there.
Okay,
And I
man,
think
what
that
if
it's
I
got to
ask you,
be.
you're the seller in this case,
Yeah.
and I say, well, what can you tell me about the neighborhood? Oh, it's nice, whatever. Be like, so you like all the folks that are
haunted.
around here? I don't know. Somebody makes a threatening letter to me, and apparently they send in disturbing packages reportedly as well.
Well, is it
Isn't
not,
that
is
something
it,
to
is
be
it,
passed along?
But that may not necessarily, not if you didn't know that it's tied to the property itself. You may think it's coming to you individually, that
Apparently
someone's
it's pretty
talking
clear
to
if you read that language that it was directly attached to the property, and it had been for. This wasn't a single letter.
Well,
But
is
in-
it- is
but
it
in real
alleged in the
estate-
lawsuit
lane of
that there were multiple letters?
correspondence.
From what
Yes.
I understood, there was one letter that arrived a week before the closing. So that would be after they're already in contract. And I just, I'm going through this right now, buying my own apartment. I don't know if you have to disclose that one nutty letter comes a week before the closing. That says, oh, by the way, we know new people are moving in here.
And with your real estate
Well, let me
transactions,
extrapolate this. Let's say something happened. Let's say this wasn't just something creepy that this guy did, but he actually took an actionable attack against these new buyers. Couldn't they have turned around in a court of law and said, time out? You were given an actionable threat, and you chose not to.
I
Forget
don't
about
think
letting
so.
me know.
I think
you didn't even let law
it
enforcement
depends
know.
whether they have a duty to disclose, and I don't know the answer if this is something that either the common law or statutory law
you
in
think
New
they
Jersey.
should?
Do I think they should? I don't know the answer to that question,
people
Rich.
buy homes all the time where there was a homicide in
Yeah.
the house and nobody
Somebody
tells
died
you
in the
that. And
house.
you move into that house and you live there your whole life and you never have another issue because it was something between two individuals and it has nothing to do with you and that house. But in real estate transactions, if you're aware of something that's wrong in the house, you either have a duty to disclose it or you give a give back of $500 to the buyer. Nobody
Well, how
gives
much would
it.
you
Nobody.
give back for this?
Well, but nobody
How much would you
discloses.
give back for the
Nobody
haunting?
gives
Do
the
you
disclosure. You just give the $500.
Do you realize him buying a house, okay? and then Mark finds out that there was a stalker on record.
Well, then the
I
other-
don't know,
if that
Rich.
was
It has
required.
to say that it survives the closing. If the stalker doesn't survive the closing, you're out of pocket, man. You're done. As a
We're
matter of
joking, man,
contract
but
law.
this is interesting to me in terms
If you
of.
were a decent person, you'd probably tell people that there's a stalker that's looking at the house.
But
if you're
Doug,
a
you'd never sell
decent
your
human
house.
being.
You'd never-
listen.
if you're a decent
that's
person,
right.
you're there with the
Somebody
stalker.
sold you that house
You
too,
get the
right?
If you're
young blood and you
stalking,
hope
you're,
that the guy
you're
stops.
taking that house to the grave with you.
But it sounds like it's dangerous. I mean, if you have children, I mean, you'd hope
well,
that
that's
somebody
Yeah,
says something.
young blood. Okay. All right. Now our picture of the day is also.
That's what goes on in Westfield, by the way.
Hey, you can't let it go, could you? That was Mark who said that, not me. It's also our picture of the day is our third story. This guy, what an idiot. Well, why do people do this? He took a selfie atop a Brooklyn Bridge. It is cool, but he took
like
that
it?
time to make sure he takes a photo of himself just to show the world.
Well,
And
why
by the
do it if
way,
you're not gonna get the
self-indict. Oh, look at you.
Because he's a prince, is what he is.
Yes, he is. Thank you. He then took the photo, of course, as you see, but then he posted on Instagram, of course.
You have to post it on Instagram. It's better than even falling into the water to post
An
it on Instagram.
NYPD official says if cops had caught him in the act, they would have arrested him, but they didn't arrest him after the fact.
He posted the evidence. Why don't they extradite him now?
I was going to ask that. Mayo, remember we talked about the bridge guys? I'm sorry, the guys whose base jumped off the building?
Right.
They got arrested. Now, eventually, the more serious charges were dropped. I think of felony trespassing they still had to deal with. These were the video that they not only recorded but then posted. But my question is, how exactly is, if there's visual evidence, as Mark
that the
points
base
out?
jumper? That's the
No,
base jumper.
this was the base jumper. He posts it.
Proud of himself, Rich.
Why wouldn't the cops say time out? There's a whole host of stuff of laws you broke. Why wouldn't they prosecute? Meaning if they're not there, but even if you have visual evidence, I mean, you were an ADA.
The police, well, first of all, as an ADA, unless the investigation was generated by our office, we relied on the police to bring it in. So basically, it's prosecutorial discretion, and the police have even more discretion. They have more power than the DA's office does because they decide what even goes to court. So if they look at this guy, and looking at him right now, they saw someone who didn't appear to be a threat, and they decided not to charge him. Now, if he was hoisting a flag or he was doing something else, he might have gotten arrested.
So it's giving an incentive to more people
Right.
to go on top of the Brooklyn Bridge, to jump, to play around. Someone's going to slip. Someone's going to have an incident. Cops are going to have to come away from real crimes to talk people down from this and to protect them from themselves. And by the way, to protect them from me when I'm biking across
But
the
I
bridge.
have a more straightforward thing, Doug. If the argument, if I follow that, is if the cops catch me hitting somebody with a bat, I'm going to get charged. But if there's video of me doing it,
Like Ray
and it's-
Rice?
right, then it's a discretionary call as to do it. If there's visual evidence, whether you're there at the time or that there's a non-debatable, then why should it make a difference?
Well, if you hit a person with a bat, there's a complaining witness, there's a victim. So usually it will be prosecuted because there'll be pressure. There's no victim here. Not every crime that occurs is prosecuted. That just doesn't happen. I mean, there are certain crimes, there's allocation of resources. They may look at this and say, listen, we have a bigger fish to fry, we're not going to pursue this. Maybe a mistake that they don't do it for exactly the reasons
I don't know
that
if
they
it's a
were saying
mistake or
before.
not. It's
Who
just
knows?
annoying is what it is.
They're afraid of the Photoshop defense could happen, right?
But he already admitted in the papers that he did it. He said, I went
Okay,
out there
right.
and I did it and it was stupid of me to do it.
It's more than just doing it, because just doing it's not criminal. So you have to look at what was the harm. Was it a disorderly conduct? Did he make pedestrians stop? And probably sure, when they're driving over the bridge, they're stopping and watching him. But normally on
The
violations...
crime is to walk around with that stupid selfie stick 20 feet out in front of you, like walking around the street with a golf club, taking pictures of yourself, doing moronic things.
Generally, the police will not
well,
make
the
an arrest
ensemble
for a
also,
violation.
I think, is criminal in itself. But we'll
That
do
is that's Vanilla Ice. That's what that is.
I don't even think that's fair to Mr. Ice. But the point, though, is we saw this also. Remember the guy who, what did he loop Manhattan in like 8 minutes or something insane like that? Remember that?
That's right.
He could have killed somebody. Sure. I mean, is there ever? I guess there has to be on the part of both law enforcement and then also at the DA's office. We have to send a message, because while nobody got killed when that guy, went Mach 3 around Manhattan, or nobody died jumping off the building, or nobody died climbing up the bridge, you in effect, especially in this digital age, are encouraging other idiots, as Mark would say, to try this. Don't they have to set examples?
I think they did arrest the guy who was driving around Manhattan.
No,
though.
they did.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he got arrested.
Yeah, I thought so.
Look, I don't seriously think that this guy should be arrested, because mainly he's a menace to himself. But make no mistake, I say this only half kiddingly, I'm now commuting over that bridge every night. It's mobbed with people there. It's difficult enough to get around as it is. And other people are going to try stupid things like this, and it's a matter of time.
And it was
before somebody
amazing,
seriously
especially,
gets hurt.
and this then dovetails into the news aspect. That again, with heightened terror alerts that are around for the upcoming weekend here, it also showed some potentially vulnerabilities.
Well, that's true. Bridges are vulnerable.
Absolutely. And we make jokes about this guy, but at the same end, it points out some security flaws. And again, you don't want to encourage anybody.
That was the rationale they used on the base jumping case. That this is a sensitive area. Very,
and they
very
show
sensitive
time and time
area.
again how easy it is to get access to those top floors. All right, when we come back here, we're going to switch gears. Former State Senator Malcolm Smith just got a 7-year prison sentence earlier today. He's the guy, if you remember, convicted of trying to buy his way onto the New York City mayoral ballot. Mr. Furnish knows a thing or two about Mr. Smith. We'll be talking about that case, and also whether or not being a public official and doing that should, in effect, get you a longer sentence than if you were just somebody on the take here in general society. We'll be right back with that.